It's been 2.5 years since this incident happened, and I'm still not sure what to make of it. It has scarred me for life, ripping away my love for the outdoors like a starving coyote tears flesh from bone. I've never told anyone this story before, but I guess now is as good as a time as any. Maybe getting my experience out there will help my broken mind cope some, or maybe it just might save somebody else from the same fate. Ever since I was a kid, I loved to hunt. It wasn't just a sport for me though. My family has always been poor, so getting a large buck during hunting season meant that we could eat well for weeks. Even after I moved out, this tradition stuck with me. Every year, I would go out hunting for the biggest buck that I could find. Being only me at my tiny house, that meat would help prepare many, many meals, and I could never get over the thrill of the hunt. But everything changed on the first day of hunting season, 2 years ago. I went out into the nearby woods, like usual. I had my rifle with me, and a backpack full of snacks and supplies I may need. You never really knew. The woods I entered were the same trees I had known all my life, so I felt no unease as I crept in deeper. I'll admit that I'd gone in further this time than ever before, but I figured it would be a good idea to find the best deer. Besides, our hunters were occupying the edges of the forest, so I didn't have much choice but to go in deeper, just to get away from them all. Eventually, the area I found myself in was one that I had never been to before, but as long as I had kept track of where I had come from, I could find my way back with ease. As the sun rose, cracking dawn light through the autumn trees, I finally set up my little area. It was a simple yet effective setup. Just me at the base of a large poplar tree with my camo gear on, spray to mask my scent, and a few bushes around me to act as cover. The natural blinds were always the best, in my opinion. For hours I stayed there. Every now and again, I caught the sound of a doe in heat. It was the best way to attract large bucks, after all. However, it seemed that my day was going to be an unlucky one, as I never saw or heard a thing back. Even as noon came and went, I was still sitting there, waiting. If I hadn't have been so stubborn, I would have found a new area to hunt. But I just kept telling myself that a deer could be on its way and to wait for it, just in case. Eventually, I did have to call it quits on that spot, as nothing was happening. I hadn't even seen a fox or a squirrel. Maybe the place was just bad for hunting overall. As such, I moved locations, going even further yet into the trees. I walked for maybe a good 20 minutes when I started to notice a dreadful type of feeling. Eyes were on me, yet when I scanned the surrounding trees myself, I saw nothing out of the ordinary. Perhaps it was simply my imagination, or maybe there was an animal finally, and it was just taking cover to observe me. Either way, I decided to stop where I was and set up my sight again. If I went too much further into the forest anyway, I feared the possibility of not finding my way back out by the time that it got dark. Again, at this new spot, I waited and sat and called. And again, no deer came, and no other animals appeared to me. Eventually, I had to call it quits for the day, as I had been out there literally the entire day. Night would soon fall, and I had to, at least, get back to the patch of forest that I knew before dark. Heavily disappointed in my unlucky time, I packed up my water bottle and deer call and shouldered my rifle. It sucked to not even see a deer in all that time, making it feel like a wasted effort. But at the very least, I had spent my time in the outdoors that I so greatly loved. However, That feeling of being watched came back as I trudged my way through the leaf litter. Hope flared up as I looked around to find the source, yet I still could not locate it. Probably just a raccoon then, high in a tree maybe. 5 minutes passed and this feeling persisted. Last time, it had gone away within maybe 2 minutes of it arriving, but this time it lingered. 10 minutes, still there. 15 and still present. By 20 minutes of this feeling, as I walked back the way I had come, my heart was racing. Fear had started to sink in. If this was a normal animal, then it wouldn't have been following me this long, unless it was a mountain lion. Mountain lions were apex predators that could silently stalk prey for as long as it took to catch it off guard. I had my rifle, which provided me some comfort, but the problem was I still had no idea where the source of this dread was. These big cats were extremely stealthy, so much so that the only time you saw or heard one was because it already decided not to eat you. The fact I only had the sixth sense sensation of eyes on me meant that I was still on the menu, if it was a cat. I walked a bit faster with a hand on the strap of my gun, ready to sling it around at a moment's notice if need be. Every now and then, I would glance back over my shoulder to ensure nothing was directly behind me. Above, the sun was setting. Unfortunately, I had gone too deep and waited too long before moving back. At the rate that I was going, I would never make it back to my familiar woods before darkness fell. I had a flashlight with me, but the advantage of night would give whatever was stalking me a better opportunity for the kill. Yet I couldn't go any quicker than my speed walk already, or I may trigger the predator instinct of the beast and have it only pounce more swiftly. As dusk fell around me, I had to finally bring out my light, just to not trip on roots at my feet. Of course, this added another layer of the already cultivating fear within my soul. Now, I only had one small area in which I could really keep an eye on at any given time. And, beyond that light's edges, my mind conjured up shadows and demons dancing among the dying foliage. Suddenly, a loud snap sounded beside me. Something had broken a twig. Abruptly, I whipped my field of vision around towards the noise. At first, as I scanned the trees and ground, I saw nothing. But then my light caught something horrifying. About 20 yards away, a creature not of nature was peering out from around a tree. Thinking back to describe it gives me chills, but I'll do my best to recall every detail possible. The most easily pronounced feature was its head, so huge and bulbous that it couldn't have been any sort of person or animal. Maybe it was an alien, but even then, the skull was much larger than any depiction of alien greys or others. The best thing I can compare the size to would be a car's tire. It had to be at least 3 feet tall and 2 feet wide, in a sort of egg shape, and that was only the head. Adorned on it was a single horn in the center of its forehead, curled into a loose spiral like that of a ram. It was gray in color, with what looked like parts of it peeling off or dangling from the bone. Pale, sand-colored skin covered its face, wrinkled in many places. I saw no ears, but its eyes glimmered black in my flashlight's beam. They were beady, little things compared to its skull. No irises or whites showed, only a soulless pupil staring back at me. No nose adorned its face, but it did appear to have a tiny slit for a mouth that stretched into a childlike grin as it stared at me with those obsidian eyes. And then, it let out a noise that I will never forget. Something akin to a baby's cooing, but so much more sinister. Of course, I screamed at the sight of its grotesque form and the noise that it made, nearly dropping my flashlight in the process. Thankfully, I managed to keep it within my shaking hand as I ran. I bolted through the forest as fast as I could, adrenaline lending me extra strength. However, I could hear leaves and branches snapping behind me. It was giving chase. When I glanced back, fighting the urge not to but failing, I saw its oversized head smacking into overhanging branches and breaking through them like they were nothing, 15 yards away. But what got me the most upon seeing its full form was its body. Unlike the head, its naked body was small in proportion, tiny even. It gave the thing maybe an extra 3 feet of height with stumpy legs and a short torso. This made it around 6 feet high in total. The compact form boasted emaciation, with ribs and other bones protruding underneath the skin, as if the skeleton itself wanted to so desperately to be free of the being. Yet its legs were filled out, not with defined muscle it seemed, but simply appearing as cylindrical stumps of flesh, not even bending where knees should have been. In front of its body, slender stumps for arms with bony fingers stretched out to my direction, ready to grab a hold of me once near. The arms must have been so long that they normally dragged against the ground. Again, I let out a shriek, to which the thing let out a shrill giggle. A demented child's laughter escaped its smiling lips that revealed human teeth. My legs screamed at me as I pushed them to run faster in response, until I tripped. In my effort to look over my shoulder and take in every possible detail of my nightmare, I had neglected to watch where I was going. Thus, my foot caught into an extended root, and I was sent down, plowing into the ground on my shoulder. Pain radiated from my arm and shoulder, probably from hitting it on a leaf-buried rock. But the adrenaline and terror numbed that feeling. Quickly, I scrambled to get my gun off my other side. My flashlight, having landed a few feet away, pointed towards the charging monstrosity. It giggled again, seemingly having me in its clutches finally, but I readied my gun and fired. In an instant, the beast stopped in its tracks and wailed. Its long arms clutched desperately to its now bleeding face as its head flailed and it stumbled. More tree branches were broken and scent falling from its painful rampage as its screams pierced my ears. I didn't waste any time taking the opportunity, and I scrambled to my feet. After grabbing my flashlight, I booked it once more. This time, the thing didn't follow me, and its cries eventually faded into the background. Thankfully, I had been going in the right direction the whole time, by some stroke of a miracle, and I eventually made it out of the woods and to my truck. Without a moment's hesitation, I jumped in and I peeled out of there. I wanted to tell somebody that night what had happened, to call my father or my uncle or mother, but I could never bring myself to do it. Who would believe me anyway? Instead, I just ended up drinking until I passed out. Ever since that night, I haven't been able to bring myself to go back into the forest again, and I get worried each time my father and uncle go on hunting trips in the very same woods. I always tell them to be extremely careful and to not go too deep, but they always look at me with confusion when I never go with them, always giving a different excuse as to why I can't. Heck, I can't even be around children that much anymore, because each time one of them laughs, it just reminds me of that thing's demented giggle. It's horrible. Now that I wrote this story down though, I'm hoping that it'll provide my mind with some sort of closure or ease. I've spent too long cooped up in my house or in populated towns. As terrifying as that experience was, I miss the fresh air and peace of the forest. Maybe one day, I'll be able to go back into the trees without wanting to vomit. But until then, I want this tale to also serve as a warning for anyone who may want to go into unfamiliar forests. Don't. Just save yourself the trouble and fear, and don't, please. You don't want to meet Mr. Longarms.